Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty fundamental. We're
Mm.
talking about Simon Sinek's Start With Why. It's
Mm.
about like what really makes certain people and organizations just click with us.
Mhm.
And I think our mission today, going through some key parts of Sinek's book,
Yeah.
is to really break down his main idea,
Okay.
which is that the people and companies that really inspire us, they don't start by telling us what they do or even
Mm.
how they do it. They
Right.
start with their why.
Exactly. Like their purpose, their belief, what gets them up in the morning, that's the thing that really draws people in.
It's like a total flip, right?
Yeah.
Because most of us just naturally start with like, here's what I do, here's the product, here's the service.
Yeah.
And we almost never get to the why.
Yeah.
And that's what Sinek is really pushing us to think about. So in a nutshell, what we're aiming to do in this deep dive is give you a solid grasp of this start with why framework,
Okay.
because it applies to, honestly, almost everything.
It really does. And it all comes down to, like you said, reversing how we usually think about communicating. Most of us, we talk about the what, right?
Right.
Our products, services, all that. Cynic says, go deeper. Figure out that driving force.
Like, what's the real fuel behind everything you do?
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so at the core of this is something he calls the golden circle. Can you break that down a little bit? What does that actually look like?
So think of 3 circles. The outermost circle, that's the what your product, your service, what you actually do.
Okay.
Then the next circle in, that's the how, the process, your methods, the things that make you unique in how you deliver that what, right?
Got it.
But then the very center, the core, is the why. Your purpose, your cause, your belief, the big idea behind it all.
Okay.
And here's the thing. Most people communicate from the outside in. They're like, here's what I do, then
Yeah.
maybe here's how I do it. But the why is often missing.
Right.
But the truly inspiring people, the game changers, they reverse it.
They go from the inside out.
Exactly. They start with their why, then the how, and finally the what.
So who are some of the big names in the book that, to Sinek, they just nailed this whole why thing?
Oh, there's a great mix. Think about the Wright brothers. They weren't the wealthiest or the most established in that race to invent the airplane, but they had this incredible passion, a belief in human flight.
It fueled them.
So it wasn't just about the what for them, it was about that deeper belief.
Totally. Then you've got a company like Apple. Their message has always been about challenging the status quo, empowering the individual, and that goes way beyond just selling gadgets.
Right, it's a whole philosophy.
Exactly. Then you have someone like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his dream of equality, that powerful why, it galvanized a whole movement. People were drawn to his belief, not just his specific plans or actions.
It's like when we get someone's why, we're more willing to, I don't know, overlook some of the what or the how, right?
Yeah, and that's an important point, right? Because it makes you think about how quickly we judge people or companies without truly getting their motivations.
And Sinek talks about this, the danger of assumptions. He gives this really interesting example early on. He shares biographical details that actually could apply to both John F. Kennedy and Adolf Hitler.
Whoa, that's a bit of a mind bender.
Right. Obviously not to draw some crazy equivalence between them, but just to show how superficial things, incomplete info, can lead us down the wrong path.
So we think we understand what drives someone, but we're missing the whole picture.
Yeah, when we base decisions on those faulty perceptions, even if we have all the data in the world, we can end up totally off track. We're not seeing the real story.
So what happens when a company or a person doesn't have that clear sense of why?
Well, they often resort to other tactics, right? They try to influence behavior without that deep, resonant why. And Sinek talks about this difference between manipulation and inspiration.
Okay, so break that down for us. What's the core difference there?
Manipulation is all about those short-term tactics, lowering prices to get you to buy.
Oh, like those crazy sales.
Exactly. Or they use fear-based advertising. If you don't buy this, you'll miss out, or you'll be less safe.
I hate those.
Or they might tap into your aspirations, like, this product will give you the perfect life.
Oh yeah, 6 steps to a happier life.
Or even peer pressure, like, millions of satisfied customers can't be wrong.
Join the movement.
Right. Or they just rely on novelty. Remember when those super thin Motorola RAZR phones came out?
Yeah, everybody had to have one.
And they were cool, right? But it was all about that newness factor.
So these tactics, they work in the short term, but they don't build any real loyalty, right?
Exactly. It's like a sugar rush. You get that initial spike, but it fades fast.
So you might get someone to buy something once, but they're not really committed to the brand.
Right. And Sinek even argues that manipulations can actually create stress for both sides.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, the buyer is always chasing the next deal, the next best thing, and the seller is constantly having to come up with new tricks to keep people interested. It's exhausting.
It's just not sustainable.
Ex-
Okay, so how do companies build that true loyalty, where customers become like advocates for the brand?
It all comes back to the why. When a company's purpose resonates with people, they feel a sense of belonging. They feel like they're part of something bigger.
It's like they're in on something special.
Yeah, and Southwest Airlines is a perfect example. People don't just fly Southwest because it's cheap.
They believe in their mission, right? To
No.
make travel more accessible.
Exactly. And that shared value, it creates an incredibly loyal customer base. Sinek even tells these stories of people sending money to Southwest even when they didn't use their tickets.
Wow, they're just that dedicated.
Yep, they believe in the company that much.
That's powerful.
It is. So when a company clearly articulates its why, it's not just selling a product or service, it's inviting people to join a movement.
So let's talk about Apple, because they're always held up as like the start with why all-stars.
Right, and for good reason.
What is it about their messaging and approach that's so different from everyone else?
Well, they consistently lead with their purpose, to challenge the status quo and empower the individual. And this why has nothing to do with their actual products.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Exactly. Their computers, their phones, those are just the what they do. They're tangible proof of that underlying cause.
I see, so the products are just an expression of the bigger idea.
Exactly. Think about their early ads. It wasn't about specs or features.
It was about that feeling, right?
Yeah. It was about putting powerful tools in the hands of individuals, encouraging them to think different.
I remember those ads. So iconic.
They were, right. And Sinek contrasts this with creative technology. They marketed their MP3 player, all about features 5GB MP3 player.
Oh.
Apple, same product category, completely different approach. They focused on the user's desire, 1,000 songs in your pocket.
It's genius because it speaks to the feeling, not just the product.
Exactly. It's purpose-driven branding. It creates believers, not just customers.
And it seems like when companies that are super defined by what they do, like that's their whole thing.
Yeah.
When they try to branch out, they struggle.
Oh, all the time. Dell, for example, known for computers. They tried to get into PDAs and MP3 players.
Did that work out?
Not really. Consumers saw them as the computer company. It didn't compute for them to buy a PDA from Dell. No pun intended.
That makes sense.
Right. Their what was so strong it overshadowed everything else. They didn't have a compelling why beyond computers.
Apple, on the other hand, even dropped computer from their name, right? They became just Apple Inc.
Exactly. That reflected their broader, purpose-driven identity.
So, bottom line, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
That's the golden rule.
And Sinek actually connects this to how our brains work, specifically the limbic brain.
Right, because it's not just a nice idea, it's rooted in neuroscience.
Okay, explain that to me.
So the limbic brain, that's where our feelings live, our trust, loyalty, and decisions. And it doesn't process language the same way as the neocortex, the rational part of our brain.
So it's not about logic, it's about feeling.
Exactly. When we connect with the company's why, it just feels right. It's a gut feeling. Those decisions based solely on the what, on features and logic, that's engaging the neocortex. But it doesn't create that deep emotional buy-in.
The limbic brain is where those gut decisions come from.
Yeah, exactly. So appealing to the why, it's tapping into that emotional center.
Okay, so you've got your why, but to really build trust and inspire action, it's not enough to just say it right.
Right, you have to live it.
Okay, so walk me through that.
It's about consistency. Your why, your how, and your what all have to align. Actions speak louder than words, right?
So it can't just be lip service, it has to be reflected in everything you do.
Exactly. That's how you build authenticity and trust with your customers and your employees. They see that you're walking the walk.
So how does Southwest do this?
Well, remember, their why wasn't just about cheap flights. It was about championing the average person.
Right, making travel accessible.
Their how, things like low fares and quick turnarounds, those were in service of that why. Their what, flights within the U.S., that aligned too.
So their loyalty wasn't just about saving money, it was about shared values.
Right, people believed in their mission.
It's fascinating how both manipulation and inspiration, they both kind of trigger those feelings.
Right, they both tap into the limbic brain.
But the outcomes are so different, right?
Yeah, because manipulation, it's like a quick fix. It might get you to do something, but it doesn't build lasting loyalty.
No?
Inspiration, on the other hand, it resonates with your values, your identity. When you're inspired by a company's why, your decisions feel like an extension of yourself.
That's so much more powerful.
Absolutely. It's about connection, not just transaction.
And this start with why idea isn't just for these massive companies, right?
Yeah.
The book even talks about how it applies to like our everyday interactions.
Oh, definitely. Sinek gives this example of a guy named Brad who goes on 2 dates. In the first, he leads with what he does for a living. In the second, he starts by sharing his why, his passion for inspiring people. The difference is huge. Leading with your why creates a much more authentic connection right off the bat.
So it's about letting people understand who you really are, not just what you do for work.
Exactly. It invites a deeper level of connection.
And being able to put your why into words, that seems to give you so much more confidence in your decisions.
Yeah, it's like a guiding principle. It's no longer, this seems right. It's, I know this is right because it aligns with my purpose.
It's about conviction. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you can communicate your reasoning to others with that same level of conviction.
So the book also emphasizes how trust, it's not just given, it's earned.
Absolutely. It comes when people believe that a company or a person is driven by something bigger than just themselves.
Like they're not just in it for themselves.
Exactly. And Sinek brings up Herb Kelleher's philosophy at Southwest: employees first, then customers, then shareholders. It's about putting people and purpose ahead of profits.
A long-term view, right?
Totally. And there's also Gordon Bethune's turnaround of Continental Airlines. He focused on employee morale and a shared goal on-time flights. Again, it's about a clear why, rebuilding trust.
So it's not just about profits, it's about creating a culture of trust.
Right. And that need for trust, it's not just a social thing, it's hardwired into us.
It's like a survival thing almost.
Yeah, as social creatures, we need to belong to a group, feel safe with those who share our values. When we trust that others are motivated by similar principles, it creates a sense of community.
It's like that old saying, takes a village.
Exactly.
Okay, the book has this great story about Shackleton and his Antarctic expedition. It's about how he put out this crazy, almost brutal ad.
Oh, yeah, the Men Wanted ad, right.
Yes, like the opposite of those glamorous job postings.
Totally. It was all about the why. He needed people who were driven by adventure, a willingness to face extreme hardship.
The ad itself was a filter.
Right. It weeded out anyone who wasn't aligned with that core purpose.
So it wasn't about skills or even pay. It was about finding people who shared his vision.
Exactly. It's a powerful example of how leading with why attracts the right people.
It reminds me of that story about the 3 stonemasons.
Oh, yeah, classic example. It's about perspective, right?
Yeah, you ask them what they're doing. One says, I'm laying bricks. Another says, I'm building a wall.
And the third one, the one with the why.
He says, I'm building a cathedral.
Exactly. Same what, but totally different understanding of the purpose behind it.
Okay, another great comparison in the book is the Wright brothers versus Samuel Pierpont Langley. It shows how a strong why can drive innovation, even when the odds are stacked against you.
Right, because Langley, he had the money, the credentials, all the resources.
You had the what and the how figured out.
Right, but the Wright brothers, they had that burning passion, that belief in flight. It fueled them, and it inspired their team.
So Langley had the means, but the Wright brothers had the meaning.
Exactly. And even after the Wright brothers succeeded, Langley gave up. He was probably more motivated by fame than by a genuine love of flight.
It's like his why was external, not internal.
Right, and that's a crucial distinction. When the why comes from within, it's unstoppable.
So true innovation, it's not just about making better products, it's about giving people a purpose, a why, to rally around.
Exactly. Great companies, they don't just tell people to work harder, they give them a reason to care.
And that's what fuels creativity and ingenuity.
Right. Remember Southwest's 10-minute turnaround? It wasn't a command, it was born out of necessity.
Because of their why, right? Limited resources, serving customers efficiently.
Exactly, and that belief in their people, it spurred them to innovate.
Okay, the book uses the story of the Barings Bank collapse as a warning.
Oh yeah, about what happens when an organization loses sight of its why.
Right, it became all about individual gain and profit.
Yeah, Sinek argues that it was more than just one rogue trader, it was a cultural shift. Their why got lost in the pursuit of the...
Well, it's scary.
It is. It shows how crucial a strong ethical foundation is, a sense of purpose beyond just making money.
And the safety net of trust within an organization. That seems so important for collaboration and risk-taking.
Absolutely. When people feel safe and connected to a shared purpose, they're more likely to take risks, challenge the status quo, contribute their best ideas.
It's about creating an environment where people feel supported, right?
Exactly. Sinek talks about Captain Robinson, a fighter pilot instructor. Her why was to build unwavering trust in her pilots. That sense of safety is crucial for high-performing teams.
And passion, it seems like it goes hand in hand with that strong connection to the why.
Yeah, passion isn't just about enjoying your work. It's about believing in something bigger than yourself.
When your work has meaning, you're more likely to be passionate about it.
Absolutely. When you connect with an organization's why, your work takes on a whole new level of importance. It fuels your commitment and resilience.
Okay, let's talk about how new ideas actually spread. The book brings up the law of diffusion of innovation.
Right, which basically describes how new ideas get adopted over time.
Okay, and where does the why fit into that?
Well, Sinek argues that those early adopters, the ones who jump on board first,
The innovators.
yeah, they're driven by the why. They're drawn to the purpose, the belief, the potential of the new idea. The majority, they tend to wait and see.
They need proof.
Right. So to reach that tipping point, to achieve mass market success, you have to connect with those why-driven early adopters.
And TiVo, even though they had a great product, they struggled initially because they didn't nail that why messaging, right?
Exactly. They focused on features and benefits, on the what. Instead of articulating the why, giving people control over their TV experience, they missed that chance to connect with those who would have been most receptive to their revolutionary purpose.
And then you have the civil rights movement, a perfect example of a powerful why that inspired a whole movement.
Right. Dr. King's why was about equality. People joined marches not because of logistics or slogans, but because they believed in the cause.
They shared his beliefs, so they took action.
Exactly. It was the why that drew them in.
The book talks about needing both why types and how types in an organization,
Yeah, you need the visionaries, the ones who articulate the why.
and the people who can actually make it happen.
Exactly. The implementers, the how people. Think of Walt Disney, the dreamer, and his brother Roy, the businessman.
They complemented each other.
Perfectly. A lot of successful startups are founded by how people, but to really make a big impact, you need that partnership between a strong why and a solid how.
So the organization itself becomes like a megaphone for the why.
Right. It's the vehicle for amplifying that message.
But that why has to be clear from the start.
Absolutely. That's the foundation for everything else.
Okay, there's this story about Ron Bruder in the book. His whole life seems to be driven by this consistent why.
Oh, yeah. He's all about seeing alternatives, helping others see them too.
And it's led him to success in all sorts of different fields.
Right. From computerizing agencies to revitalizing brownfields to starting the Education for Employment Foundation, his why has guided his what throughout his career.
It's like his North Star.
Exactly.
And then there's the celery test in the book. It's a simple way to make sure your actions align with your why.
Oh, the celery test, yeah. It's basically asking, does this decision fit with my core beliefs?
Like if your why is health and you're choosing between celery and a candy bar.
The answer is pretty obvious,
Yeah,
right?
right. So there might be times when you have to compromise, but the why helps you stay on track.
Exactly. And Volkswagen struggled with the Phaeton, a luxury car that didn't fit their people's car image.
It failed the celery test.
Big time. And some argue that Walmart's troubles stem from straying from Sam Walton's focus on people.
They lost their why.
In a way, yeah. Costco, on the other hand, they consistently prioritize employee well-being, and it's working for them.
They're living their why.
Right. In communication, it's not just about shouting your why from the rooftops. It's also about listening.
To make sure it's resonating.
Yeah. Real impact happens when others connect with your belief.
So it's a two-way street.
It is. You put your why out there, then you listen for the echoes.
Okay, the book also talks about the importance of a leader who really embodies the why.
Oh, yeah, like a living example.
Bill Gates at Microsoft, Howard Schultz at Starbucks, Herb Kelleher at Southwest. They were like walking, talking representations of their company's why.
Exactly, and that authenticity is powerful. But as a company grows, that connection to the original why can weaken. That's what Sinek calls the split, and it can lead to a decline.
So keeping that why alive is crucial for long-term success.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, the book suggests that the real competition isn't about beating everyone else.
It's about competing against yourself.
Becoming the best version of yourself, guided by your why.
Exactly. And Sinek tells this amazing story of Ben Coman, who finishes marathons despite huge physical challenges.
Wow.
His races, they become symbols of perseverance, and people are drawn to his spirit. They join him at the finish line.
It's about connecting with those who share your belief.
Exactly. When you focus on your why, you attract support and build community around a shared purpose.
So this has been a deep dive into start with why. The core message is clear. Knowing your why is essential for inspiring action and building lasting loyalty.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, for you, our listener, a few things to ponder. What's your why? Start paying attention to how the people and companies you admire communicate their why.
All right.
Think about the difference between manipulation and inspiration.
Yeah, those are two very different paths.
And remember that consistency is key. Your why, your how, and your what should all be aligned.
Absolutely. It all starts with that core purpose.
And here's a final thought to leave you with. In a world that's obsessed with what people and companies are doing,
Yeah,
how can you cut through the noise and clearly communicate your why?
it's a challenge.
It is. And even more interesting, how might understanding the why behind the things you buy and the companies you support change your own decisions?
That's a great question for everyone to think about.
It is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty fundamental. We're talking about Simon Sinek's Start With Why. You know, it's about like what really makes certain people and organizations just click with us, you know? And I think our mission today, going through some key parts of Sinek's book,
Yeah.
is to really break down his main idea,
Okay.
which is that the people and companies that really inspire us, they don't start by telling us what they do or even how they do it.
Right.
They start with their why.
Exactly. Like their purpose, their belief, what gets them up in the morning, that's the thing that really draws people in.
It's like a total flip, right?
Yeah.
Because most of us just naturally start with like, here's what I do, here's the product, here's the service.
Yeah.
And we almost never get to the why.
Yeah.
And that's what Sinek is really pushing us to think about. So in a nutshell, what we're aiming to do in this deep dive is give you a solid grasp of this start with why framework.
Okay.
Because it applies to, honestly, almost everything.
It really does. And it all comes down to, like you said, reversing how we usually think about communicating. Most of us, we talk about the what, right?
Right.
Our products, services, all that.